As you close your eyes, feeling comfortable in whatever posture you are in, taking a deep breath in, filling up the chest, holding on to the breath, and as you do, being aware of all that stress building up within and all around the chest as you continue to hold the breath until you can't hold it any longer. And when you can't hold it any longer, gently letting it go and relaxing the body, the mind with it. Your whole entirety feeling relaxed as you slowly let go of the breath. Taking another deep breath in, doing the same, holding on to the breath. And when you can't hold it any longer, gently letting go of the breath, relaxing yourself even more deeply, even more deeply. As you use every breath to relax yourself, the mind and the body, even more deeply than ever before. Even more deeply than ever before. Enjoying this experience, feeling completely free and relaxed as you observe this organic motion of the breath, arising and passing away, arising and passing away. Nothing to cling on to, and completely at peace with whatever we choose, with whatever which is. With every breath that you take, with every involuntary breath, as you breathe out, use this breathing out as an anchor to go deeper into relaxation, for the peace and tranquility in your heart and mind to grow as you become sublimely at peace with this present moment, where you are free of everything. Your eyes closed, your position still. This is just you with yourself. And the more that you are with the peace, the freer and more bliss that you feel. Gently Taking a deep breath in, a deep breath filling up the chest, holding on to it for a moment, and slowly letting it go through the mouth. Very gently, though, very gently. As you take another deep breath in, filling up the chest, and breathing out gently through your mouth, feeling the chest relax. The attention now to the five senses. As you take another deep breath in and relax. Wonderful. Now coming into the present moment as you open your eyes and awaken with a sweet little smile. All right. So that was our mini, in Pali we call it Anapana, but this is breathing meditation. It was a very brief and very simple technique, which I'm sure all of you have practiced. So Paula has told me about all of you having a connection to psychotherapy, right? So I invite you to ask me any question with regards to anything that you might like regarding Buddhism, or even how to bring in uh, techniques of meditation in a therapeutic aspect. And I could also tell you about the different words that we use in guided meditation to sort of bring out the more therapeutic aspect for the person that we are doing it for. So I will stop telling you what questions to ask me. You can ask me whatever you want. Do you have any question?
Quite often when I meditate, I get a sense of it's almost like I've got a life jacket on and it's inflated, and I get a very light sensation like that, and it's almost pushing my head back. I just wondered if I don't know what's normal really. I don't know if that's something which, so bodily sensations like that, lightness in the chest, really almost like lifting up. But that almost like something else is doing that, not me. I just wondered if things like that are quite common through.
All right. I'm sure all of you have heard of the word yin and yang, the push and the pull. The push and the pull exists in our meditation as well. And this arises from our mental attitude of that specific moment. So that is why usually before we even start meditating, we would coach the student or the meditator, the practitioner, on how to sit. Because if we are lying or sort of using the back of the chair, there will be more of a pull motion. If we are slouching forward, there will be more of a push motion. In our minds, we maintain an attitude which would then translate into the posture as well, where our buttocks will be supported with a cushion, our back is straight but not rigid. And this would allow, and also where your hands are. If your hands now, usually something that I like, because in the monk sort of garb or costume, we have a belt. So we would use that belt to sort of rest our hands so that there would be no slouching. Some people like to rest the hand on the knee or on the lap. However you would choose to do this, you have to make sure that um, it is sort of secure in that position, that there is no way that you would be slouching or you would be pushing back. Because when this happens, this would affect how our minds react with an object. If you push too much, there is more restlessness which would arise. If you would pull too much, you would tentatively fall asleep very easily, right? So this we see that is then the importance of the posture and of course the attitude. In meditation, if I am to sort of start off from the Buddhist side of things, what we essentially try to achieve or try to sort of understand or develop is the skill of being aware without doing anything else, right? Without doing anything else. I wish I had a piece of paper to draw it out for you, but do I? No. So it would be what we call this is, for example, we would have the noting mind, right? The noting mind is the mind which is intimately aware or intimately working with the object, right? So for example, if this is the object, this part of the finger, if this part of the finger is the object, right? The noting mind is like this, right? So the noting mind is intimately working with this object, which it could be anything. It could be the anapana or the breathing that we did. It could be the body scan. It could be the mind, which is another technique, the walking meditation or anything of that sort. It could be anything. And then we have the awareness mind, which, for example, the noting mind is here. The awareness mind is here like that, right? So then in the meditation, what we really do is the awareness mind is aware of the noting mind. We do not entangle between or come in between the connection of the noting mind and the object. Because then when we do that, we entangle ourselves with what is the object and create a personalization with the object. Now, because you are a psychotherapist, if a non-meditator or a person who is just starting to meditate, the way that, or another sign is if you have an internal sort of dialogue going on, judging everything, calling everything out, and doing all of these things that the mind would usually do, this is a sign that our primary cognition is working through the medial cortex. Now, in this medial cortex, everything that is perceived through the five senses, the eyes, the nose, the ears, the tongue, the body, everything that is perceived through the five senses is done in a way, it is quite much like a profit and loss analysis, which is done at every moment. How does this affect me? How am I going to benefit? And we don't even know this. This is the way the mind takes it. This is the ego filter in the mind, right? How does this particular scenario benefit me? When this happens, everything that would happen around us by cognition or cognitive programming would be understood in a way that it is personal, right? It is personal. It is all good if it is all happy and all cheer, but if it is bad, if someone is talking behind your back, if the situation of your life is not so good and there are a lot of toxic people around you, it is not so good, because then you would personalize that sort of those external toxic natures and take it in a way that you would feel that it is because of you or because of me, you know. So this skill that we try to develop is, and what it does, it shifts the cognition through the medial cortex through the to the either sides of the insula, which is this part of the brain. And when it does shift, we are more in tune, in line, connected with present moment awareness. And in present moment awareness, we can tap into a state of peace anytime that we so desire. You can empty your mind, if I may say that, empty your mind um, from all that frantic all those frantic natures going around us, and go into that state any time of your choosing, using the breath or the mind or any sort of technique. And that is essentially what we do. So really, there are also memes about it on the internet. We are really trying to do nothing, right? We are really trying to do nothing, to develop that skill of being able to observe something while not taking it in as something which is personal or something that we identify with. That is a skill that we try to develop. And that is the truest, most powerful tool in MBSR, MBCT, right? I'm using those parts of explanation because, again, psychotherapy, because this is that aspect of training or developing that skill of letting go. And that is so important in mindfulness practice. So important. We can go into how it is important, but if someone asks questions, all right. So yes, yes. So Paula has put the meaning of MBSR on the chat. So any more questions? Ian, I hope I answered your question. So something that you could do is really make sure your posture is correct, that your hands are resting in the right place, and do not rely too much on the back of the chair, right? The back of the chair is a really good anchor to put you to sleep, right? Because what happens is you're so comfortable, what we refer to as samadhi in English, concentration, increases to a level where now you cannot maintain it because you're too comfortable in the back of the chair. And so you tend to sort of doze off of it, right? So we try to sort of start meditating without a back support. But of course, if you have some back problems, you can try with a bit of back support, but always know, as you progress, you don't need any of these things. The posture maintains itself by the power of the concentration of the meditation. And when that happens, you can stay for long hours. I remember when I first started meditating, which was, in this huge hall in Myanmar. It was a beautiful hall with so much good vibrations in the hall, because you would get about 1,000 monks coming into the hall to meditate every single day. It was a large monastery, and I used to sit right at the back. And I remember not being able to be seated and in meditation for even 5 minutes. I was so restless, so sort of thinking, oh my gosh, like these other monks are much, much more senior. They can meditate better. Maybe I can't do this, all of that. And then, because I was also sitting right at the end, so then, this went on because we do meditate for about 18 hours a day. And obviously, when you can't meditate for 5 minutes, 18 hours a day can be quite tiring. And you're waiting until you can sort of run off through the jungle back into your room. so so I went to the monk who was in charge of the seating arrangement, because you can't sit anywhere you want. You are allocated a seat. And I told him, with the little Burmese I knew at the time, I said, I need another seat. And he asked why. I said, I need another seat. I didn't explain. I didn't have the Burmese knowledge to explain it in his language. But I said, I need a seat over there in the front. Right. And he did. He was nice. He did give me a seat with these monks, quite behind, but yet I could see all these monks who would sit for about 5 hours, 6 hours. They wouldn't even get up. They were like a statue there, making all of us other junior monks feel really bad. and I remember, just I was so serious at the beginning of meditating, and I was not talking to anyone, noble silence, and it just got so toxic, really. And I developed this digestive problems, and all of that. I was so serious on the meditation that I was literally, and I'm very honest on this, I was getting nowhere. And And it was also affecting my physical health. And this is not like months of meditation. This was about um, easily about 3 to 4 weeks of strict, strenuous, arduous meditation, and it was affecting my health. And I felt, yes, my mind was slowing down. All of that was good, but I did not see myself really progressing as effectively as I thought I would. So then I was like, so then my digestive problems got a bit bad, and I had to stop meditating and start meditating from start meditating in my room rather than going to the hall. And then I was like, okay, I'm done with this. I'm going to chill out a bit, right? So I went to the library and I grabbed this book, Chicken Soup for the Soul. Out of all the other books in the library, we had this huge library, and I went and grabbed this book written by housewives, authors, and it was Chicken Soup for the Soul. And I remember taking the book. It was a tiny sort of pink color book, but really fun to read because, I was chilling out. And I remember going to the refectory to get my food, and I would sit next to some American monk who was about at the time he was about 3 times my age, but we had such fun with each other. He was such a nice person to be with. And he was reading this thick, big book about Buddhist philosophy and Buddhist psychology or something like that, a big, thick book. And then I was with my tiny chicken soup for the soul. And I saw, and we saw that monks were sort of walking past us, and they would be sort of looking at him and then looking at me and then back to him. And we were wondering why these monks are looking at us. And then at one point we realized, okay, it was the book titles. So then with this, I relaxed. I told myself I'm going to enjoy my meditation more. You know, I relaxed. And let me tell you, within 2 weeks, I was able to read, and not in any way am I boasting or exaggerating on this. Within 2 weeks, I was able to sit from 4 to 5 minutes. I could go up to, within a week, I was able to go up to 2.5 hours of sitting time. And within the next week, I was able to go into 5 hours of sitting time per session, right? So no moving, just absolutely enjoying it. And every session, I remember at the time, would end in sort of me having such sort of happy tears in my eyes. And it's a beautiful experience. It is an absolutely beautiful experience when you're with yourself, and you just have to work on getting past that sort of 1 hour 30 minute sort of barrier. And after you do, and you start enjoying it, and it doesn't feel like a chore anymore, and it doesn't feel like something that you have to do, like you're taking a pill every day, or taking your vitamins or going to the gym to keep healthy. As soon as your attitude about meditation changes from something that you have to do to something that you want to do and something that you enjoy, it becomes such a beautiful process. Achan Brahm, I don't know whether you know Achan Brahm. Achan Brahmavansa, who is this international monk celebrity, who is also a graduate who has a master's in, I think it's, mm, what is his master's on? Nuclear physics or something of the sort, something along the lines of physics from Cambridge University. And he's a monk now, and he's like an international celebrity living in Australia. And he has this book where at the end the book finishes by saying mindfulness meditation is better than sex. So you will have to just do as much as you can to find out. All right, any questions?
Yeah, I'd be interested to know, I don't know how long the answer for this might be. What is a self in Buddhism?
Okay, what is a self in Buddhism? That's the, well, in Buddhism we refer to it as no self, or you know. So maybe you have heard, you probably would have, um, in meditation, because meditation does spring from the East, mindfulness, we have two main types or techniques of meditation. One which we refer to as tranquility meditation, samatha meditation, and the other is vipassana or insight meditation. Now, the basis now, insight, some of the meditation was existent in the world with Hinduism or Brahmanism, right? So when you hear about all these different yogis in the Himalayas living in the snow-capped mountains and caves in the Himalayan range, these are all yogis who practice samatha or the tranquility subjects of meditation. When you hear stories about the Buddhist monks and the Buddha and his core practice, it is vipassana, right? But in Buddhism, we do use their tranquility practices as well. So in vipassana, the core of the vipassana practice is the knowledge of impermanence, the knowledge of suffering, and the knowledge of non-self, right? Now, before I go on, I want to just say that the knowledge of suffering is not that life is suffering. Sometimes even the Buddhists make this mistake. It is the potential of suffering. I just want to mention that before we move on, right? So, yes, when you're sitting on, when you're in a five-star restaurant or when you're in a Michelin star and you're eating those gastronomy foods, it is not suffering. It is absolute pleasure, right? So life is not complete.
His self disappeared.
There is no Bhante.
I wasn't quite sure what to expect today, but I like the fact that we're kind of asking questions and he's giving such incredible answers.
Well, I mean, thank you for jumping in there, Georgie, with the no self question.
The Western thing of self and how we develop and that identity of personality and things, identification with personality, and what we let go of to kind of be happier selves or whatever, more rounded selves, and then the kind of more Eastern approach.
I think we have Bhante back with us.
So, because we all have personalities, characteristics, behavior traits, and all of these things, which we assume or we feel, yes, it is unique to ourselves. However, when we do look at the root of all of these behavior patterns, all of these behavior patterns fit into three definite, clear set of categories. That is greed, hatred, delusion, and non-greed, non-hatred, and non-delusion. The three bad, we would say, and the three which are good. All of these ways, from the ways that we would eat, the way that we would talk, the way that we would walk, everything that we would do would come into these categories. And also, it has been something which has been adopted by something out of the world rather than something that we have produced on our own. So in Buddhism, we believe that that part of absorbing these sort of unique personality characteristics and traits has been done through the five senses, through the medial cortex operation of ego, and put it into a sort of a package where now we believe or we understand certain parts of this world to be ours or us, which creates the manifesto of self, the manifestation of self within the mind. That is what we sort of understand through the Buddhist perspective. if I have answered. You are free to question me further. Of course, we could go deeper into this, and you are free to question me further if you have a follow-up question on that. So in Buddhism, we do not belong. And also that John Kabat-Zinn refers to that statement of no self, again, as a way of treating depression, anxiety, and those respective relapses through mindfulness-based techniques there again.
Bhante,
Yes.
I've got a question, and I'm mindful that I don't want it to come across as provocative, but I guess I'm curious to sort of hear your thoughts.
Okay.
I'm wondering how do you see or feel that such a prolonged period of meditation as a monk, many hours a day, how do you feel that benefits the greater good of society? What do you hope to kind of achieve by that, I guess?
Okay. This was asked by, who asked the question, please? Was it Lizzie? Oh, yes, Sam. Okay, got you. Now, I think during our earlier years of training in the practice, in meditating and sort of giving in all what we have given in to the practice, what we look to achieve is personal growth, right? And personal recognition and identification, to understand ourselves, to understand where our insecurities come from, to understand the root cause of the anger that we feel raging inside us, to understand the reasons behind the actions and behaviors that we would have. I think now, being a person, being a monk living in the West, being a monk who has or does, so much of things to help society now, that has been made possible by the practice and training that I have undergone as a young monk in the East. And in the Buddhist practice, the Buddha mentions that each and every monk should be living in a monastery with a teacher for the first 5 years of their life as a monk. And this is because as when we become monks because we are by nature flawed, right? It is not perfect people who become monks. These people, including myself, are all people who are absolutely flawed, who have the roots of greed, hatred, delusion, and non-greed, non-hatred, non-delusion working within us. So I asked my friend to introduce these psychologists who would then be able to offer these tools and techniques to the rehabilitation programs. And something that he told me is, Bhante, it is really difficult to find a psychologist who would have the mental strength and the capacity to offer mindfulness teachings. Because what he said was, most of these psychologists that we do have in Sri Lanka experience different mental health issues, and they themselves are not getting the help that they need. Because obviously being a psychologist or being a person working in mental health is not in any way an easy task, especially because these things that you tend to talk with your patients, and sometimes when you're operating with people as tough as prisoners, these things sometimes do stick with you. And you have to have really clear guidelines for yourself, a really strong practice for yourself to keep it official, and not bring it back home. Because even as a monk, because monks are literally people who do just similar things to what you would do as a profession, and we are trained to do and offer these services to people. even sometimes these stories that we would hear are so personal, and also it can be a trigger, personal trigger, because you might have come having similar experiences with your family and friends. So it is really important to have this personal practice developed before, and that is really sort of talked about in Buddhism, before you do plan or you do attempt to help people. And I think my practice as a young sort of practitioner in the forests of Burma have really helped me develop that strong sort of resilience required in this sort of teaching. That would be Sam, that would be my answer to you, right? That would be my answer to you. Finding yourself is so important. And I think when I first became a monk, I was such an angry person, you know, I was such an angry person. I used to get annoyed very easily and all of these things. And that practice that I went through really did help me to sort of become the better version of myself, I believe, you know.
Thank you, Bhante. It's made.
Mm,
I really loved your answer, and
mm,
I guess it's quite similar for us in our training as therapists,
mm,
in that a very large part of that is the personal therapy journey that you go on yourself,
mm,
to study yourself,
mm,
then be able to kind of decenter when you're with your
mm,
clients, to be able to bracket your own story, not to become entangled with theirs, to be able to focus on their needs.
absolutely. And something that I experience with the practice and deep practice is you become so sensitive in the way you sense people, you sense their energies, you sense what in the world is going on in their minds, right? And um, I remember this thing where I did this spiritual retreat for prisoners, and they were all murderers. They were the creme de la creme of the prison, and because I did it in Sinhala, which is Sri Lankan, and my Sri Lankan is very cute because I speak like a small child because it's so bad. And anyways, I managed to give the talk, and they liked it, and obviously they did think that I'm adorable, maybe. And after the session, as I was walking out of the hall, they wanted to come and sort of shake my hand, or express their sort of, you know what I mean. And because I had sort of been in the prison for a couple of times, they knew me, and all of that. And I remember every time that one of the prisoners touched me, either on my hands or on my shoulder, I could feel each and every one of them. I could literally feel, and it was kind of weird after I sort of exited the hall, and there was no one. It was just me, the security, and sort of my assistant. I was like, oh my gosh, that was tough, wasn't it? Being touched by all these people, I felt a bit violated by their energies in a way. But you do feel, and you do become very, very sensitive. And I have sort of realized that happening a lot, actually, when you sort of go deep into practices. You can just walk into houses and you can get a sense of what that house is going through at that moment. And that is all. This is nothing sort of miraculous. This is nothing sort of magic. This is not magic. This is you. This is that energy. This is provable in science as well now. And it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. And being a person with a master's in cognitive science, I feel like my meditation has really given it a more practical edge when we do work with patients, when we do work with clientele who come from very complicated places. Mm. So, any other questions that we might have? I'm sorry if I'm boring some of you.
I'm wondering, Bhante, what kind of
Yes.
things that you do with the people that you work with, because I'm not aware. I think I'm realizing that I'm really not aware of the similarities between actually working directly with people. I think of monks as teaching meditation, but I don't really know anything else that you do in that sort of pastoral vein.
Well, I would not call it pastoral, but of course, I would understand why that word is sort of fitting. But the first thing that I would do is literally be a friend, right? So every time that I would sort of meet a person or a person who is interested in coming on as a person who wants to sort of get some help, the first thing is the first introductory chat. And during this introductory chat, for example, I remember with the female prisoners, we would talk about different things. They would be, it's basically being a really good friend, right? And even in business, when we do corporate programs, this is very important. Be a friend, be a person that they can trust, be a person that they sort of know that their information is secure with, right? And be authentic. Don't pretend to be a friend, because these people that you will work with, they are probably the best liars. They're better than you. And, even if it is in business, these people know when it is a lie. Do not try to be inauthentic. Be authentic. And in that authenticity, offer friendship. Put friendship on the table, right? Not being weird in a way and cringe in a way where you say, oh, I'm here to be your friend. No, not in that way. Which is really creepy. Not in that kind of a way, but being present, being in the conversation, being honestly interested in that person's well-being. And that is the first. That is the most important thing. The second is trying to understand what that person is going through, not in a way how you would go through it, but in a way of how that person would be going through it, right? How that person would be going through it. And if you don't understand, don't try to understand, right? If you don't understand, because every moment that you try to understand, what you're really thinking is your life in that person's experience. No, that's not going to help, and that's also going to sort of, that person is going to understand your sort of language in that way and sort of feel, okay, no, this person, if you do not understand, something that I do is I am open to just listen, right? I am open to just listen. Something that I used to do as a very young person in pastoral care, is I thought that I must be the person with all the answers, right? What a fool, right? How could you have all the answers? But I think being a monk and being a person who's that respected and all of that, you think, oh, you're the person who has to give all the answers. No, you don't. You do not have to have all the answers. Sometimes people just expect you to listen. And most of the time, people actually just want you to listen. And in listening and understanding, you are able to really have a good view about that person's life and experience, right? And that is the most important thing. That is why people with good friends, there's a low probability of people who have good friends ending up with mental health issues. That is why social drinkers tend to have less mental health issues as well, according to statistics. Why? Because when you're a social drinker, you tend to hang out with a lot of friends, and you tend to sort of release your stress, talk about whatever it is that you're going through. Hanging around with friends, it's not about the drinking, it's about the friends, the connection, the communication. The Buddha says there is no in capitals, no spiritual development without friends. Because why? Because you are trying to go against a system, right? Your phone is probably now on silent, but we all probably have a lot of notifications on our phones right now. I know that I do. Right? That is the stream that we are in. What we are doing is going against the stream, and in that, you need support. You can't do it on your own, right? That is what the Buddha says. And that support comes from people who understand you, who value you, who would listen to you, who would offer you a shoulder to cry on. And that is so important. So important. Having good friends. So in that way, I would say, with my clients personally, with my practice and with my ethic, what I really try to do is really be a good friend. Is really be a good friend. And for me, I have understood with my practice, there is no reason to take anything too seriously. Right. I know that is, I know that is not a very British thing to say, but I'm not British. So I will say anything. And taking your work so seriously is not going to help. No, just chill out. You're there to help a person. And if you're so serious and it's not going to do much help, there are people, it's going to be a lot of resistance from the other side. Just enjoy. And remember, at the end of the day, it is not only you helping the client, it is also you coming out with a good mind that you can go to sleep with, or be with your partner, or go home with a peaceful mind. So it's not really just about taking care of the client, it's also taking care of yourself. So chill out. All right. Do you have any other questions? Lizzie, I hope I answered your question. Sometimes
Yeah, really interesting. Thank you.
I was just curious about where you see spirituality sitting within mindfulness, because I know that's something with MBCT and MBSR. There's a tendency to sort of maybe keep them apart a bit.
This is a very good question, Sheila, and this is also a question that I have discussed with a couple of my professors and doctors at Oxford University at a casual discussion, nothing official. But this is also something that John Kabat-Zinn is very much aware of, and he edited his book and republished it because of this issue, right? MBSR, MBCT, and also I'm guessing all of you are British and live in the UK. So with the APPG programs in Parliament, what they do try to do is to make it very secular, right? But okay, so then what is very secular? Very secular would be, to increase productivity in offices, against mental health in a very secular way, all of this. Now we tend to use mindfulness, MBCT, MBSR in a way where we use it to achieve things that we want to, right? And in my conversations with these professors who were in similar sciences, something that the discussion sort of took us towards was the opinion that within the medical within the medical circles, that this is a conversation which is current, which is the development of narcissistic, sociopathic, and psychopathic traits through mindfulness. Because, for example, because of the awareness, sorry, what? what's going on with my words, because the awareness of the mind, you tend to be able to control the mind very effectively, right? Now, even for example, if a person was to put sort of a piece of equipment on my head to measure my sort of waves, my brain waves, I can effectively control them, right? And I can effectively control them. And I'm telling you this because I've had these equipment, and then I have sort of, and you can do it. You can control these waves. And because of this reason, you tend to be able to control your emotions, your feelings, and all of these things. And that sort of leads to the main point that leads to sociopathic and psychopathic behaviors through narcissism is the control of empathy. Controlling empathy as you feel. And this is a dangerous thing. When you're controlling your empathy, you're not supposed to be controlling your empathy. You're supposed to be feeling it and being aware of it and having the wisdom to understand your empathy, to understand the line between empathy and foolishness, or having no empathy and foolishness. All of these things. And that comes in from the spiritual aspect. But what is spirituality? Spirituality is one of those words which cannot be defined with one definition. A mother can have a spiritual experience when she's giving birth to to a child. A husband or a partner can have a spiritual experience when they have met their lovers for the first time. A person can have a spiritual experience through food, through experience, through sex, through whatever it is. Right? Spiritual experiences are experiences that bring in a sense of awe and connection with a person or sort of instance, right? And this can come in different ways. And I think in current society, we need to be a little bit sort of careful of the word or the usage of the word spirituality as well, because it has become such a trend where spirituality, or saying that you are spiritual is a kind of a very fashionable thing, right? With their crystals and all of these things. And you would wonder, is this real, or is this actually something which is true for that specific part, right? For that specific part. So it is something that you had to work with on your own. But yes, there is a clear sort of risk in sort of giving a person those powers of control over the mind. And also, let me tell you, the people who know to control their minds know how to control your mind. Right? Because why? Because you can only control your mind when you understand and accept all those cracks and crevices of your mind. And in understanding those cracks and crevices, you understand the cracks and crevices of another person's personality and behavior. Right? So there is a clear risk. And these risks are also currently being sort of discussed in professional circles. Sheila.
Thank you. That's really helpful.
Yeah. What I would say, meditation, it's growing. It has been around for 2,600 years in terms of Buddhism, 5,000 plus years in terms of Hinduism. Meditation is a powerful tool, be it religious or not. But remember, for example, I was a born Catholic. And then I came into Buddhism because of me wanting to control different sort of mentalities of my mind. And for me, the reason that I have fallen in love with the practice of Buddhism is because it is more a way of life. It is because through the Buddhist practice does not take away your sort of right to your life, but rather it teaches you how to become and master your own life, which is really important to me, right? Which is really important to me. So it is really more of an atheist-based religion because there is no belief in God. It is really about developing these values of the mind and the body, which enables a person to have better, more happy experiences of happiness, yet to be aware and to understand with wisdom that life is not all happiness. Because if you are living life, you're going to have happiness and pain, and I am all right with it. You know. So yes. So do we? I know that it's 11:35 now, right? So Paula.
Bhante, I did want to sneak in a question if you have time. Otherwise, I shall be very grateful for the generous
No,
time.
we can do one more question.
Thank you, Bhante. I was wondering about ethics and wisdom. It seems to me that's a point of difference between the psychotherapy training I do and what I've learnt in Buddhism. And earlier on, you mentioned friendship and empathy. You mentioned many things that we're taught in humanistic Buddhism, in Rogerian Buddhism. The thing that I find I appreciate that extra that Buddhism gives me is the ethical content. So I wonder if you've got anything to say about the ethical content of Buddhism and how that enhances either meditation or, you know, the practice as it benefits oneself.
Are you referring to Sila, Paula, or something else?
Yeah, I think I am referring to Sila actually. Yes.
Okay. So, so Sila, yeah. So the ethics that we have in Buddhism, are, I feel that they are not dogmatic practices, that they are practices that are rather practical in a way. For example, alcohol, right? Alcohol is something in British culture, alcohol is something which is a celebratory drink. But when you do drink alcohol, alcohol is like a way of borrowing happiness from the next day, right? So you borrow happiness and you are all happy now, but the next day it really should be a Sunday or a Saturday where you can just, where you can just be in front of the TV and just sort of, or sleep or something like that, because you borrowed all your happiness. It is very practical, right? Just imagine through COVID, through Corona, if you checked or if you went on your afternoon walks and you saw all the garbage bins, the recycled garbage bins, with the amount of alcohol which was filled in these garbage bins, right? I know where I live, there was so much. They had different sort of other sort of big sort of boxes having these sort of alcoholic sort of the containers. It is a problem, right? And we do the ethical considerations that we have in Buddhism is to respect ourselves and to respect other people, right? To respect ourselves and to respect other people, and to sort of find giving true value. For example, meat. There's a lovely sort of Netflix documentary on this as well. I think it is what's the name of that Netflix series? It's all about being vegetarian and sort of how meat is actually destructive to your body, and sort of the whole marketing strategies of sort of McDonald's, Burger King, and KFC, and all these places sort of saying, okay, to be a man, you must eat meat. How fragile that sounds. Right, in sort of the marketing strategies sort of put, and how sort of athletes would say, no, eating meat has really sort of cost me my real energy. The ethical considerations that have been brought in Buddhism is really sort of allow the body and the mind to operate in a capacity where you can now use that energy to bring out your best powerful self, right? With no regrets, with confidence and comfort with your personality and behavior, right? I would say when I was 18 or 19, now, it's very difficult to shut me up. But back in the day, it was very difficult to get me to open up, right? I would not speak, right? And this sort of confident boost that I have sort of received through the practice has enabled me to sort of speak my mind and know and understand that just as I may have problems internally, insecurities, all of these things, other people do have it too. It is not something that you have to be pushing yourself down for or thinking that you are weaker than another person. No, we are all equal. We all have all these different things that we are going through, and we all will get through it if we do persevere, right? If we do persevere. And those ethics enable you to have the strength to do that, right? Have the strength to do that. Just imagine you're going through a midlife crisis, and which most of us haven't yet. Sorry, Paula. and if you're with a bottle, right? If you're with a bottle the whole day, right? You're going to be prolonging that midlife crisis. You're going to be having other crises in between that midlife crisis, right? I know people who've lost children and they've taken to the bottle, right? And they spend years and destroying their careers because, they don't want to muster the courage to put the bottle down and really focus on their minds, right? Those ethical considerations are important, are important. You become a person who is able to put, or give more attention to those ethical considerations when again that sort of ego center sort of diminish in your mind. Ego has a lot to do with it because, for example, we are programmed in a certain way, and for us to break that programming, it takes that amount of courage and push. And the more you hold on to those past behavioral patterns, that is an ego-based sort of way of taking to it or sort of working with that. And the Buddha, with most of the things that we do, we live in, or we would like to say that we live in a disciplined or sort of community where we do not use physical sort of we do not use our bodies to sort of communicate. We use our speech. And the Buddha says most of the problems that we do get into is to do with wrong speech, right? And if you do think about it, it is quite true, isn't it? I remember I went to one of these bases, military bases in I think it was west of London. I can't exactly remember where that base was, but it was a big base. And I made this weed joke. I ended my speech by saying, get on meditation and you will save up on your weed bills. and I remember all the military people who were there were, for a moment their eyes went like, did the monk just make a weed joke? so I didn't get into trouble for it because I was a monk, but you can get into trouble a lot with your words. And it is very important, especially with your friends, with your family, proper communications. And also proper communications, if you take in a mindfulness sense, how you communicate with the mind during your meditation is even more important. How are you telling when your mind wanders? How are you bringing it back to the object? Are you degrading the mind? Are you belittling the mind? Are you taking an ego base to say, oh, why are you going there? Come here. No. If you are to start a fight, a tiff with the mind will attack back. And you will be caught in this sort of dialogue of violence between you and the mind. A compassionate approach subdues the mind, allows the mind to listen. And that approach is always much more efficient than that violent, sort of aggressive approach. And if you are people, maybe you will go into sort of offering guided meditations. I presume that you do a bit of hypnotherapy, maybe, I don't know. If you do, suggestibility is much, much more efficient when it has compassionate based language used. Suggestibility increases when compassion is part of the conversation, right? And that suggestibility is, even with your friends or even in sort of therapeutic forms, suggestibility and increasing suggestibility can be done through having compassionate based dialogue with your mind or the minds of other people. And that is very, very effective and proven to be effective as well. So really, just be professional friends. Right? And you get paid for it, which is lovely. And just be authentic. I think people have love with the things and the stories that people have, and with the things that you learn and from other people who are your clients, you gather so much, right? For a moment, just put away what you think is right and wrong, because what you think is right and wrong is what you think is right and wrong, right? And just be completely open and free from your judgments, to just understand that person as a person who is going through that. And I think that is the most important tool in therapy, and a tool that we are really missing. Because, I know some therapists who are huge names in the therapeutic sort of circles. And, I know of one instance, I will not mention her name, but if you have all surely sort of, her, and she was in the middle of a hypnotherapy session, and at the end of the session, the hypnotherapy was not finished, but she had another client waiting outside. And this woman the hypnotherapy cycle was broken. The client was in tears, and she was like, "I'm sorry, but I have another client, so goodbye." And she had to call her husband, and when the husband came, she was crying on the pavement of the street, because she was in that shock of sort of going through that. Making money is, it's good. But if you're in a field of therapy, if you're in a field as you have chosen, similar fields of helping people mentally, don't do it for the money. Do it for the compassion. Do it for helping people. And that will pay off. That I promise you, that will pay off. The money will come, right? Do it for the compassion. Do it for the pure need to just help people. And you will have so much of clients, I promise you, right? It is when you run behind things that you don't get it, right? Run behind things when you sort of let go and you do the right thing with a pure heart of compassion. These things will come to you. Your clients will be telling other clients or their friends to come to you because you're such a lovely person. Let that be the force that drives you in your occupations, and that is so important. That is so important because we in the West, when I can't remember who said it, but in the West there was this conversation to say, I think it was Christmas Humphrey, where it was said, "Do you think Buddhism is a threat to the ideologies of the West?" The reply was, "Do you think the West is a threat to Buddhism?" And you see that. How many people with 10-day certificates after practicing meditation for 10 days, they call themselves meditation gurus. I need my money back. I feel like I've just ripped off 8 years of my life and this other person. Right? It doesn't work like that. We need, because at the end of the day, we need to be able to go to bed happy, right? At the end of the day, the occupations that you have chosen are going to play a very important part and role in your happiness in life, right? So remember, compassion first. Compassion always first, right? And this is talked about a lot in corporate circles now as well, in deal making, how compassion is the way to go. I know people who operate with wealthy businessmen, and through COVID, with the difficulties of being able to pay the bills, and these people who help with investments taking more compassionate approach, how they ended up profiting even more than they would have had they stuck to the business approach, right? Compassion is something which is important, and moreover, it is an integral part of your individual happiness. So don't let it go, and don't let your work be just for that pound, for that pound, right? So I have to go, guys. Thank you so much. It was lovely. Thank you, Paula, for inviting me. It was lovely to see all of you, and all the very best.
Bhante, just on behalf of the whole group, I thank you so much. You have been engaging and joyful, a lovely Christmas present, I should say.
I am your Christmas present, and I'm wearing red. So
I appreciate everybody that came today. Thank you all.
All right.
Thank you.
Lovely. Goodbye, guys.
Thank